mine, this is actually me with my Aunt Gloria. She worked for Ma Bell Telephone for 50 years. She started in 1948 and was using, with phones like this, right? She was doing switchboards. In 1998, the year before she retired, she was climbing up cell phone towers. This 72-year-old woman just climbing up cell phone towers. It was awesome. And so think about how much has changed in communication. And I remember, like, any of you have this or remember this thing? There's a video that just came out that's gone. Here, I'll show it to you. Have you seen this video about the teenagers trying to figure out the phone? Just watch a few seconds of it. This is classic. Trying to figure out how to work it?
You guys have made this all worth it. Wait a minute. Think of it for. Think of the fun.
And I realize they've never heard a dial tone. Think about that. They've never heard a dial tone or a busy signal. Eventually they figure it out. It's like 5 minutes, and it's gold. But so thinking about that device, but then this, of course, was revolutionary. By the way, if you ever had this phone and you were a teenager growing up, it's like if you ever had a number that had an 8 or a 9 in it, you never got a date, right? Because it was like 8, never mind. I don't have time. I'm just going to walk away. But it was revolutionized by something completely different. This, which is kind of the same thing, but now with buttons. But you're still connected. So then, in the house, you could walk around, right? Cordless, early 1980s. However, you're still kind of captive to about a 30 to 50-foot radius. So, this. Anyone know what that's called? What? The Zach Morris phone. It's like you've seen this before, yes. Yeah, this brick, they call it the brick phone or the car phone, right? A friend of mine had one of these in high school, and he would drive around and he'd be talking on it. And I was like, oh, who are you talking to? And he's like, nobody, I can't afford it. It was $6 a minute, right, to have a phone call back then. This was my first phone I ever owned right here, the Nokia. I still have it, along with a bunch of other old phones in a drawer somewhere in my house, which is really strange. But this was significant because this was the first phone that could do what besides calling people? You could text. You could play games to Snake, someone said. Yes, you could play Snake. Text. So if you wanted to say hello, you had to do 4433555555. Yes. It was the first phone that could text. All of a sudden, communication started to evolve. It went from this, let's talk to each other on the phone, to now we can actually send little letters to each other, right? And then the next phone came out that I told my wife, I was like, honey, I promise, 2004, this will be the last phone I ever own. I know it's $400, but it's got this slick sounding name. It's metallic sounding. Do you remember the Razor? Yeah, it was like you could hurt somebody with it and also call people. Now, what was significant about the Razor was it was the first phone that could also do what now, besides texting? Pictures. So now we've gone from phone calls to texting to pictures, and they're really terrible. I look back at they're little grainy things, right? But all of a sudden it starts to change and convert, and my wife let me buy it. And I said, I promise it'll be the last thing. And then, well, then they happened, and I had to buy something else. So what I want you to do is look at this next, thinking about the future as well. Look at this video real quick and just tell me, just kind of shout out, what are some things you notice that are different? People, no people. Someone once said, well, one's black and white. I was like, yes, I know it's black and white. Right, over on the right, for just a half a second though, there was a person there. What was that person doing? Yeah, fixing it, going over and kicking it when it doesn't work, right? Programming it. And there's a big increase right now with automation, right? We see it all the time, we hear about it. And so there used to be a quote that said, like, we're preparing kids for jobs that don't exist. There could also be the quote now that says that we're preparing kids for jobs that won't exist, right? We have to be careful about that when we're giving them. We want to make sure they have enough flexibility coming out of our schools for that. Look at these companies right here that no longer exist. You may see some familiar ones up there, right? Toys R Us, I know that was just recently. That's sad. Blockbuster, there's still like a few in Alaska, I think, but it's pretty much gone. And then look at the companies that didn't exist until the last really 30 years, 40 years, you could say. So still, there's travel in both, by the way. Some airlines went extinct. Southwest, by the way, was about 43 years old. That's why it's not listed, but it's still fairly newish for a travel company. a lot of experiences, a lot of technology, and really kind of shifting the way we're going in terms of the modern world. And this is not an investment talk, and this is not a timeshare, but if you had two pennies to rub together, look at these two facts. This is interesting, because this affects education. So there has been a global increase in robotics and artificial intelligence. Robotics, we have started to feel in education. We are buying all sorts of little spheros and things that we're using to our kids to learn how to interact and work with robots. We think it's pretty important. We want to give them those skills early. AI, like Alexa, we're just now starting to see somewhat in schools. And how does that affect the classroom when you have a teaching assistant that can answer any question? And it means we have to make our experiences much more enriching for our students, right? How many of you go to the movies? Okay. Why do you go to the movies when you could just watch the movie on your phone? Curious. The experience, popcorn. There's always someone like, I go for the popcorn. Yes, it's expensive popcorn, but that's part of it. It is the experience. And you think about schools, it's almost the same idea. You could learn a lot on your phone. How many of you ever learned something with YouTube? Right? Fixed all sorts of things. But there's still the experience, and that's the thing that's going to be important with us in schools going forward. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. What I want you to do now is you're going to watch a video. It's 2 minutes long. It's a little cartoon. And just kind of watch and observe everything that's happening.